Hi, and welcome to episode 55 of the Noble Character Crafts podcast. My name is Amy, and I am coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live on a farm with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Friday, February 22nd, 2019. This is a podcast all about my crafty life, and today I have knitting, crocheting, and hand-dyed yarn to share with you all. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoy this episode. You can find me online on Instagram and Etsy at Noble Character Crafts. You can find me on Ravelry at Noble Character. And I also have a group for this podcast in Ravelry under Noble Character Crafts Podcast. In that group, you will be able to find the show notes for this episode as well as previous episodes and several other chatter threads. You can also get in contact with me through my email at noblecharactercrafts@yahoo.com. And I have links to all of the places that you can find me in the description box below. I have a finished object to share with you all today, and I'm so excited to share that I was able to finish my Cassandra cardigan. This is a gorgeous pattern by Jill Carina, and I test knitted this for her. So it's actually going to be released, the pattern will be released on March 1st. So that's very exciting, coming up very soon for any of you that would like to make this beautiful garment. I absolutely love it. It was a joy to make from start to finish, and yeah, I'll just talk you through everything that I did to make this. I used my own hand-dyed yarn, Noble Character Crafts yarn, on my pitter patter base, which is fingering weight, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And the colors I use, the main color is my Honor colorway, and the contrast color that I used is my Kindness colorway. It's knit from the top down seamlessly, so you start with the ribbing here at the top, and I used a US size 2.5 needle, 3mm for the ribbing. On all of the ribbing, I used that needle size. And then I went up to a US size 8, 5mm for the color work. And then for the main body, I used a US size 6, 4mm needle. The gauge for this is supposed to be 24 stitches to 4 inches, and that's what I thought I was getting. That's what my gauge swatch had said I was getting. But actually, now that I have washed and blocked it, the gauge is actually more around 26 stitches to 4 inches. I try to take gauge like in several different places, and it's off a little bit. Like sometimes it would be 27, sometimes it would be 25, sometimes it'd be 26 and a half. On the color work, it was more around 25 stitches to 4 inches, but on the main body, it was averaging at about 26 stitches to 4 inches. So it's a bit tighter than what I thought I was getting, but thankfully I did go up a size than what was recommended because I wanted it to be a bit of a looser fit. The original design is meant to be more of a fitted garment, and I wanted it to be a little bit looser to have a little bit more positive ease. So I did go up to the large size, and anyway, I'm really happy with how it fits, so it worked out in the end. It was a steeked cardigan, so last time I showed it to you, I had not yet opened up the steeked stitches that I had made 7 steeked stitches here in the middle, and I was already finished with the body last time I showed you. I was finished with one sleeve and I was working on the second sleeve. So anyway, I was able to finish that second sleeve and I used my sewing machine for the first time. I have steeked a cardigan before, but this is the first time that I have used yarn that isn't really suitable for steeking. This being 75% superwash merino isn't the best choice for steeking because it doesn't grip as well as 100% wool would do, a non-superwash wool. So anyway, I used my sewing machine to sew lines on either side of the area where I cut it open. And I was really nervous to do that, so I kind of was putting off steeking it open. Usually last time I worked on a cardigan that I steeked it as soon as I could. As soon as I finished the body, I cut it open because I was so excited. But this one, I was a little bit nervous about having to use my sewing machine. And anyway, I just did it. It wasn't hard. It was not, I shouldn't have been afraid of it because it went really well, and I'm happy with how that turned out. Anyway, then I picked up the button bands and worked those. All of the ribbing is 1x1 ribbing. In the original pattern, however, the pattern calls for all of the ribbing to be worked in the contrast color, but I decided that I wanted mine to be worked in the main color. So that is one difference that I made, which ended up that I did not need very much of the contrast color. I only used about 50 grams of the contrast color, I believe. So there was plenty of that. And I think in the original pattern, if I had done ribbing in all of the contrast, I would needed more than one skein. So I had actually dyed up 2 skeins of the Kindness colorway, and I didn't use the second skein. So I did use 4 skeins. Well, not quite. I used a little over 3 skeins of the Honor colorway. I have all of the detailed notes of how much yarn I used exactly in my Ravelry page if you are interested in that at all. Okay, last time I shared with you that I had knitted the first sleeve and I had made it quite a bit shorter. In the end, when I tried it on before blocking, the sleeves were about 3 inches too short from where I wanted them to be. But I knew that since it was a superwash merino yarn, that it would probably stretch quite a bit once it was blocked, and it did. So it's a pretty good length right now. It's still a little bit short. I wouldn't mind having an extra ½ inch to 1 inch more on the sleeve length, but it's okay. It's a comfortable length. I would rather it be this length than too long, because then it just gets a little bit annoying. I may go back and add a little bit more ribbing if it ends up bothering me in the end, but I really like it. You know, I usually, as I'm a stay-at-home mom, I homeschool our kids, I'm always, you know, doing stuff around the house and rolling up my sleeves, and they can easily get in the way. So I think it'll be okay. I really love the color work along the bottom of the cuff here. It's also at the bottom. I'll stand up in a second to show you the bottom of it. But I really like I love all of the color work, and I'm really happy that I was able to use a speckled yarn, because I just think that's so fun in the color work to have a little bit of, you know, that pop of color coming through in the speckles, but you're still able to see the beautiful design as well, because there's enough of a contrast between the contrast and the main color. Let's see, the pockets are cool. I'll show you those when I stand up, but I did want to mention before I stand up that I decided to make Dorset buttons for this cardigan as well. This is the second time I've made Dorset buttons. And so if you're not familiar with them, I learned about them when I watched an episode of the Fruity Knitting podcast. They had a special on Dorset buttons, and they interviewed a lady that made them. And so that's how I first found out about them, and then I just looked up a tutorial on YouTube to learn how to make them, and I will link to that in the show notes as well, so that you can check that video out if you're interested. But I just used a ½ inch washer, so like what you use when you're using nuts and bolts. You can, you know, obviously just get them at a hardware store. I ordered these online because I actually had bought them for hoping to use them for stitch markers, but I didn't like using them in the end. Let me just grab one so you can see. Here it is. It's just a copper ½ inch washer, and I had ordered a whole bag of these hoping I could use them for stitch markers, but they are a little bit too, the edge is not rounded off at all, and so it really bothered me when I was knitting. But anyway, they worked well for these buttons. So anyway, you just use one of these washers and you wrap yarn all the way around the outside of the ring first. You do some kind of a little knot type of stitch that kind of knots the yarn all the way around the loop so that the loop is completely covered with yarn. And then you run the yarn around like this, like spokes of a tire. And I do 12 of those. So I have, you know, 6 wraps, but you know, there's 12 spokes. Then you cinch the yarn around the middle to kind of tighten up the middle so that all of those spokes are meeting at the center. Then I tied off that yarn. So I started, what I just described, I did with the Honor colorway, the main color. And then I took the contrast color, and you use that, well, you can just choose what colors you want. You can choose to use the colors however you want. You could do the spokes in a different color than the outside ring, or you could do it all in one color, whatever you like. But anyway, I use the contrast color to then go using a back stitch to go in and out through each of the spokes, and I went around the circle 2 times to fill in the gap between the middle section and the outside ring. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but I have a picture on Ravelry as well that shows that a little bit better. Maybe I'll insert that here so that you can see the buttons a little bit better up close. But anyway, I just really love making Dorset buttons because you can obviously customize them to, you know, use the exact same yarn, and so it just really, of course, matches perfectly. And I just think it's so much fun to make your own buttons. I mean, that's just so cool to use a washer and have these beautiful buttons in the end. So I think that's really fun. Plus, another great thing about Dorset buttons is they're super lightweight. And I find that with cardigans, if I use a metal button, wooden buttons are typically a little bit lighter weight, but I have used some metal buttons on cardigans before, and then it just ends up kind of pulling on the garment a little bit too much. And so I really like how these are so lightweight. That really is a bonus as well, I think. The sleeve, it does not have any decreases in it at all until you get to the very bottom, which is the first time that I've ever made a garment with no sleeve decreases, but I really like it. I love the fit of it. It still is a nice fitted sleeve, really, but you didn't have to worry about all of the counting and keeping track of where to decrease. You just had to keep track of your rows. So I really like that, and I was glad to do that, and I really like the way it looks. So I think that's all for that before I stand up. So I'm going to go ahead and stand up so you can see it a little bit better. So here it is. I'm really happy with how it fits. There is an option in the pattern to do some increases for the hips here. I decided not to do the increases, and I'm happy with how it fits anyway. So I suppose I could have used a little bit more wiggle room in the hips, but I'm happy with it. The pockets here are I love how they are made using the contrast color. And you can kind of see a little bit better how those were constructed in my previous episodes, but basically I just knitted a flap of that contrast color and then I sewed them in. So there you can kind of just see that I just sewed along each edge to attach them in, and they're really nice. I love the color work along the bottom here. Here, I'll turn around so you can see the back. Color work goes all the way around, of course. I don't know if I will wear it all the way buttoned up very much. I really like it unbuttoned quite a bit too. So I really like it with, well, it's kind of cute with just the middle section buttoned, or of course you can just keep the top buttoned. There's lots of little different styling options that you can have with, of course, any cardigan. But anyway, I kind of like it with these top 3 buttons fastened. I do have a bit of an issue with it pulling right there. I kind of keep going like this to keep that closed when I have this buttoned, but it's okay. I might be able to, maybe I should try to block it again and try to stretch out the yoke a little bit more so that I don't have that issue, but I like it with just the top one buttoned, or I may just wear it open a lot too. So I'm really happy with it. I just think it's such a beautiful design, and I'm so glad that I was able to test knit this for Jill. It is just a great design, and I highly recommend the pattern. I can't recommend it enough. It was so fun to knit. I'll show you the steeked edges here. I did not put any kind of a, you know, on the last cardigan that I steeked, I sewed in a ribbon to cover up these loose edges. I didn't do that yet. I just don't have anything on hand right now. I might go back later and add something, but I don't think it's very noticeable. It really turns in, you know, on its own really well, so I don't think it's really necessary. So anyway, I'm really happy with it. It's such a beautiful design. I'm so pleased with it. So I just want to remind you all that this pattern is coming out on March 1st, and Jill Karina has decided to actually increase her generosity towards the Cancer Research Organization. I will put the name of that down below because I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. She is based out of Norway, and so I do believe that company is also based out of Norway. It is a cancer research organization, and she is actually going to be donating 100% of the sales for this pattern from the month of March to that cancer research organization. So that is just incredibly generous of her. But the reason why she is doing that is because Cassandra, who this cardigan is named after, was her cousin who had cancer. And so this pattern was made in honor of Cassandra, and of course then the donations are being made in her honor as well. So that is just such a wonderful, generous gift that she is giving to them. And again, I just highly recommend this pattern, not only for the beauty of the design, but also to help out with that cancer research organization. And it is just such a fun design. So thank you again, Jill, for allowing me to test knit this for you. It was such an honor, and I know that I'm going to love wearing this. So I am sure I will get a lot of use out of it for years to come. So anyway, very, very pleased with this. And this is the second garment that I have finished this year, so I feel really good about that, it being only February. The first garment I finished, actually I think I started this one at the very end of last year as well, but I started the other garment that I finished this year in 2018 as well, but still, it's good that I have finished 2 garments this year. I'm happy about that. So I am going to go on to works in progress, but before I do that, I wanted to share a little excerpt from a book that I'm reading to my children. So I read to my children a lot. Like I mentioned, I homeschool our children, and a lot of what our homeschooling is me reading to the children. So I read to them during schoolwork, of course, through history books and science books and the Bible, and anyway, we read a lot. And then also during lunchtime, I am always reading a chapter book, some different chapter book to our children. And then before they go to bed, we read a different chapter book. So I just really love children's literature. And anyway, this is a book that's new to me, but I know it's not new, but I had never heard of it before. And I'm sure I picked it up at a thrift store because that's where I get a lot of the books that I read to our children. I don't know how it had an award on it. So if it ever has an award on it, this is the Pura Belpré Award. That catches my eye, and I figure if it got an award, it's probably a good book. So anyway, this is called Esperanza Rising, and it is by Pam Munoz Ryan. Forgive my horrible pronunciation of Spanish. I never studied Spanish, and so there is a lot of Spanish in this book, actually, and I'm trying to stumble my way through pronouncing it, but I'm sure I'm butchering it, and I need to study it some more so that I can pronounce it correctly, but I haven't done that yet. Anyway, I was reading this to our children, and a section of it really caught my eye, and I wanted to share it with you all, not only because, well, it's about crochet, and then also it was a bit applicable to my next work in progress that I have to share with you. So anyway, at the very beginning, I haven't gotten far into this book yet. I'm only, I think, on the 2nd chapter. But anyway, at the very beginning here, so this book is about a little girl named Esperanza, and this is a little section where Esperanza is crocheting with her grandmother. "Come, mi nieta, my granddaughter," said Abuelita, holding up yarn and crochet hooks. "I am starting a new blanket and will teach you the zigzag." Then I'm going to skip over a section. Esperanza complained, "Must we always crochet to take our minds off worry?" And then again, she watched the silver crochet needle dance back and forth in her grandmother's hand. When a strand of hair fell into her lap, Abuelita picked it up and held it against the yarn and stitched it into the blanket. "Esperanza, in this way my love and good wishes will be in the blanket forever. Now watch. 10 stitches up to the top of the mountain. Add 1 stitch. 9 stitches down to the bottom of the valley. Skip 1. Esperanza picked up her own crochet needle and copied Abuelita's movements, and then looked at her own crocheting. The tops of her mountains were lopsided, and the bottoms of her valleys were all bunched up. Abuelita smiled, reached over, and pulled the yarn, unraveling all of Esperanza's rows. "Do not be afraid to start over," she said. Esperanza sighed and began again with 10 stitches. I just thought that that was so sweet. I really liked the part where she talks about crocheting her hair into the blanket. I mean, of course, that can kind of be gross. I don't know, for some reason our hair becomes disgusting once it falls off of our head, right? But have been lots of times when I'm knitting along or crocheting along and notice that my hair has gotten into the stitches. But I really like the sentiment that she says, "In this way, my love and good wishes will be in the blanket forever." I just thought that was really sweet. And then I also love how she encourages her granddaughter not to be afraid to start over when she made a mistake. So I just thought that that was really sweet, and I really love it when there's any knitting or crocheting references in books as I'm reading, and I thought that would be fun. I also thought of Eva of the Charm of It podcast. She has often shared little excerpts from books that she's reading that have references to knitting or crochet, and so I was like, oh, I think that would be fun to share with you all as well. And in light of having to start over, my first work in progress is in the process of being ripped out and started over. It is being held in this beautiful project bag from Tanny Casey, and it has this enamel pin on it from Twill and Print that is a row counter. It says one more, just one more, and then it has this dial on it that you can keep track of the rows. It's really nicely made. And in here is the BRIOCHEALUSCIOUS shawl by Andrea MOWRY that I have started. And I was doing so well, I thought, working on this. I was getting quite far. I had actually just started at the 3rd section last night when I realized that I had messed up the 2nd section completely. So I am in the process of ripping out the 2nd section and picking the stitches back up, which I hate with a passion. It makes me so stressed out to have to rip out stitches and try to pick them up. But of course, the more I do it, the more comfortable I become with it. But it's just very anxiety producing trying to rip out all these stitches, and I'm afraid I'm going to mess the whole thing up. But thankfully, I really haven't gotten very far in this project, so it's not too horrible. Anyway, this is another one of the projects from my Make 9 list, so I'm just continuing to work along on that list that I made, and I'm really happy about that. So it started here. This is section 1, where you can see the cream and black striped together, and that went smoothly. There are no mistakes in the first section, I don't believe. I ended up with the right number of stitches at the end of section 1, so I'm pretty sure I did that correctly. But then in section 2, you start doing some short row shaping, and I messed up the way in which I picked up the wrap and turns. I ended up decreasing every time that I picked up the wrap and turns accidentally, and then when I got done with section 3, when I got done with section 2, I did not have the right number of stitches. I didn't end up counting them because it was 250 something stitches at that point. I just started working section 3 and it wasn't working out, and I was like, what am I doing wrong here? And then finally I was like, I better check my stitches from the end of section 2, and sure enough I was off by like 30 stitches because I had messed up every row of the 2nd section. Anyway, the yarn I am using is all my own hand-dyed yarn. So I'm using all fingering weight, and each of the different colors is on my pitter patter base except for one. So the cream is just my undyed lambs colorway, and so again my pitter patter base is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and I stripe that in with my solid black night colorway. So that was from section 1, and then for section 2 I am using this colorway, which is called Silent. It's a light gray base, and then it's speckled with black, which also has bits of rust colored in it and some blues, some tiny little blues, but that's all because of the black dye that it breaks into different colors. There's also a pop of red every once in a while, but that's really seldom that you get a pop of red. Anyway, I am striping that with a bit of my night colorway again, but this is on my Twinkle Toes base, so it has some gold stellina in it. So it's 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 5% gold stellina. And I just had, I think it was a 50-gram hank of this on the gold stellina, and so I thought I would use that in this shawl as well to give it a bit of sparkle. So that is what I was striping in here with the Silent colorway. So I really like how it's looking, but as I said, I'm ripping it back. So anyway, it's going okay. The other color that I will be adding in as well is my newest colorway, which is called Insight. And this is just a bare yarn speckled with black again. So it has just real lightly speckled with black, and then it also has the bits of orange and blue in there as well every once in a while. So anyway, it's going okay, but it really is a fun knit though. I mean, it's just garter stitch with a few increases, and I love shawls. I really love shawl knitting. It is so relaxing if you're not having to rip it out, but in general, it's so relaxing and enjoyable, and I really love it. I love shawl knitting. So I am making this for a lady that I go to church with. So I also love gift knitting, and so that makes me happy to be making this for her. And I love black and white together, and gray. Anyway, I just think it's going to be a really cool look. I'm not following the exact the color choices. I'm not following the pattern for the recommended color usage. You know, she has it spelled out that you should use the different colors in different areas, and I'm just kind of going to be putting in the colors wherever I want, however I want to. I'm not going to be following her instructions exactly for where to put each color. I think the original pattern calls for five colors of yarn, and I'm only using 4. I'm not 100% sure on that though. So you have a main color, yeah, and then 4 contrast colors, and I am using only 4 colors total. So anyway, I'm just going to be playing around with the different color placement as I see fit. I'm using the recommended needle size, which is US 4 3.5 millimeter needle. I always just use the recommended needle size for shawls because gauge is so, it doesn't really matter. You know, unless you want it to be looser than the fabric that you're getting. If it's too tight or too loose, you could change it, but I'm usually happy with whatever they call for. I just use whatever they recommend. So anyway, it's coming along, and I don't like ripping it out, as I've said, but I really don't mind reknitting this because, like I said, it is just such a easy and enjoyable knit. So I love just the ease that shawl knitting gives. It's so much fun. Anyway, so that's where I'm at with that. So hopefully I will get that figured out tonight and start back on it soon, working it appropriately. The problem I had was when it says the stitch that I messed up on is where you're supposed to knit the wrap stitch with its wrap. And what I was doing was knitting the stitch before the wrapped stitch with the wrapped stitch. So I was ending up decreasing every time I did that by a stitch. I was knitting 2 together where I shouldn't have been. Anyway, once I got into the 3rd section, I was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. You're supposed to like pick up the wrap along with that stitch, not knit 2 stitches together. Anyway, oh well. You live and learn. Okay, my next work in progress is in my beautiful project bag that my friend Tina made for me. And this is a Japanese knot bag, I believe it's called. And I really love it. This is made out of an old tablecloth that she repurposed. And this is a kind of an abstract picture of a field. And I just really love this bag. And in here is another project from my Make 9 list. I am again trying to make the sparkling cider hat. This is the 2nd time that I have attempted to knit this pattern. The first time did not work out, and I had to rip it out pretty quickly after I started it because it was turning out way too big because I was not using the right kind of yarn. But now I am using the right kind of yarn and it's turning out really well. This is again my own hand dyed yarn, Noble Character Crafts yarn. and this is in my Refreshes colorway. I am using my Gentle base for this project, which again is a fingering weight, but this is 100% non-superwash merino wool. And I really love this color. It's actually coming across accurately. I've had so much trouble photographing this color because it usually doesn't pick up the green as well. You know, it's a teal color, it's a solid teal, but usually only picks up the blue color and it doesn't come across as green as it should, but this looks really good right now, so that's awesome. And I am holding it together with just a sample. I do not sell this mohair, but I bought a sample skein from my yarn supplier, and I just wanted to, well, I wanted to be able to knit this pattern, and I wanted to test it out. And I have not yet decided if I will be dyeing and selling a mohair base, but I am really enjoying it. I'm really loving knitting with it. The fabric that it makes is just so luxurious. It's so incredibly soft. It hasn't bothered me as far as knitting with it because some people have mentioned that mohair, well, it does shed more than any other kinds of yarn. So the fibers in it do shed a little bit more than normal. But that doesn't bother me as I'm knitting it. Some people have some irritation with it getting in their eyes and their mouths. I haven't had that problem. Some people are really sensitive to it as far as it making them itch or, I don't know, have some kind of allergic reaction to mohair, but I don't seem to have that. The test will come in once I actually start wearing the hat. I'm not sure if I will really like this next to my skin. I can be a bit sensitive to, for example, I cannot wear alpaca next to skin. It bothers me so much. And so I'm wondering if this will be comfortable for me to wear next to skin, but it's really fun to, I love the feel of it in my hands. So I'm really enjoying it, and I love how this pattern is working up. It's really fun. I am really enjoying it. So again, this is the Sparkling Cider hat. It is by Kristen Layer of Wool and Vine, and it is made to be knit with a fingering weight yarn held together with a lace weight mohair. So I am doing that. The first time I knitted this, I had a mohair base or a mohair yarn that I was holding together with a fingering weight yarn, but it was, the mohair was a fingering weight as well, which I didn't realize when I started the project. And as I was knitting it, it was turning out way too big. So I ended up frogging that because I didn't have the right weight of yarn, and so it was turning out way too big. I'm much happier with this color anyway though, so I'm glad that that one didn't work out because I'm liking this color a lot better anyway. So again, this is the first time I've ever knit with mohair, and it's also the first time that I've ever added beading to my knitting. So as you can see, there's these beautiful beads that I'm working into the pattern as well, and I'm really enjoying that. It is quite tedious and slow knitting a row with the beads, but as I'm doing it more and more, I am getting more used to it, and it's going a bit faster, and it's really fun. I mean, I kind of got to concentrate when I'm doing the row of beading, but that's okay. I like a bit of concentrated knitting sometimes. I am using the method that, when I was watching one of Kristen's podcasts, she has the Wool and Vine podcast, and she had mentioned that Grace of Babel's Traveling Yarn podcast had done a little tutorial on using dental floss to bead with. So I went to her YouTube channel, but I did not find the tutorial. She had posted a video on her Instagram feed actually. So if you go to her Instagram feed, I will put that down below because I can't remember off the top of my head what her username is on Instagram. But you need to scroll down quite a bit before you find a little tutorial that she has using dental floss to bead with. The original pattern calls for you to use a crochet hook to try to get the bead onto the stitch, and I tried that and I couldn't get it to work. I couldn't catch the yarn and pull it through that bead. I had a really small crochet hook, but it just wasn't working for me. So instead, I am using dental floss. I'm not really sure why dental floss and not thread, but I am using dental floss just because that's what she recommended. On her Instagram video, she does not thread the dental floss through a needle, but I did because I just found that a little bit easier. She just pokes this through the stitches, but I just found that too flimsy, and I think it works a lot better to use a needle. So basically you are also cabling, as you can see here. You can see there's a bit of cabling. You're cabling at the same time that you're adding a bead in here. And so what I do is I rearrange my stitches, and then I grab a bead and put it on the needle, and then you just go into the stitch with this needle, and then you, well, just go watch your video. I don't know if I can explain it, but you just wrap this back around and put the needle back through the bead again, and then you have a bit of a loop like this, and you pull the bead onto the stitch and then put it back on the needle and then knit it. That's really confusing, isn't it? But anyway, hopefully you can find the video on Grace's Instagram feed if you want to figure out how to use dental floss. Although maybe there is a YouTube tutorial for using dental floss for beading. I didn't actually search for that. I was just looking for Grace's video specifically. So anyway, I am using the recommended needle size for this as well. The ribbing was made with a US 2.75 millimeter needle, and then I switched up to a US 4, again 3.5 millimeter needle for the main body, and it's on a 16-inch cord, so I can just continue working in the round, which is so handy with hats. Although I do find that for some reason knitting in the round like this really hurts my hands after a while. I can't work on this for a long stretch of time because I guess I kind of hold the needles pretty tight when I'm working in the round like this, and it ends up hurting my hands after a while. But anyway, I work on it a little bit here and there, and then it's so fun to see it grow. The ribbing is 1 by 1. I did that for 2 inches before I started the patterning. And yeah, I'm about halfway through the repeats. So I have about, I'm about halfway done, and then I'll be decreasing, of course. And yeah, hopefully this will work up pretty quickly. I think it shouldn't take me too much longer to finish it up. And I'm hopeful not, because the next project that I really am so anxious to cast on needs these needles. So I would have cast that on already if I had these needles free, but that's probably good that I am finishing this up before I start another project, just so that I can stay focused and not have too many works in progress, which kind of can stress me out sometimes. I like to not have too many works in progress. So anyway, I'm absolutely loving this pattern. It's so much fun. I guess I didn't really finish my thought about the mohair, did I? I was going to say that I think once I finish this, if I decide that I really enjoy mohair and want to work with it some more, I may start stocking that in my shop as well, but I haven't decided yet. So I will be sure to, of course, let you all know if I do decide to start selling mohair as well, but I haven't decided for sure yet. I have to like the yarn that I sell. I'm not going to sell something that I don't really like to use myself. So anyway. Okay, I think that's all for that. I hope so. So those are the 2 new cast-ons that I have been working on. I have one more work in progress that I'd like to share with you all, and it is one of my scrappy Afghans. I have 4 scrappy Afghans on the go, and so I like to work on those here and there and share with you my progress, as once I have a bit of progress made on them. I like to share them every once in a while. So I have made quite a bit of progress on this since I showed it last. This pattern is called Show Off Your Colors, and this was also a test crochet that I did for Andrea Delhi, and I really love this pattern. It's so easy and fun, and I love how I can use up all of my scrap yarn for this project. There is a progress keeper right here, little squirrel, and he is marking where I was the last time I showed this off on a podcast. So you can see I have made quite a bit of progress there. I am using all of my worsted weight scrap yarn for this project. The original pattern calls for a fingering weight yarn, but it is very easily adaptable to any weight of yarn that you have on hand. So I just adjusted the crochet hook accordingly. I am using, I should show you this bag I'm keeping this project in. This is a wool felted bag that I got from my local thrift store. If you watch often, you know that I get lots of things from the thrift store. I love thrift shopping, and I picked this up at the local thrift store. I thought it was so fun and nice big project that I can keep all of my scrap yarn in, which I actually don't have a ton of worsted weight scrap yarn left right now because I've been putting it into this blanket. I am using a J hook, which is a 6mm hook. This is just a boy hook, and I add a pencil gripper to the base of these hooks in general. Usually the metal hooks, I add those to the base because it just really cushions the handle on my hand here, so it doesn't dig into the palm of my hand as much. That really is more comfortable to have that gripper on there. So anyway, this is going really well. So you can see in the pattern here that this side shows off more of the bright colors, and this side shows off, I don't know if you can see it very well, but I can see in person that this side shows off more of the darker colors. The way that I am organizing the yarn is that every other row is either a dark color or a bright color, the way that I've tried to organize my yarn. So I try to just spread out the colors throughout. I'm only using one color per row. Some of the rows run out midway through and I switch, which is fine with me because of course this is a scrappy blanket. But otherwise I'm switching the color at the end of each row using the Russian join method. And that's going really well. And yeah, I just really love how it's working out. It's such a, I find that whenever I pick this up, it's hard for me to stop because it's just such a fun, meditative stitch. And I just keep thinking, oh, I'll just do this one more row, and then, oh, I just want to add in one more color, oh, just one more color. But at this point, I'm actually to the point where I kind of want to wait until I get some more worsted weight scrap yarn before I work on this anymore, because I really want to spread out, you know, I want to spread out the colors a bit more. I don't want to have all of the same colors bunched up together. I want to have it spread out more, and I'm running low on my options right now, so that's okay. I plan on all of my scrappy Afghans being long-term projects, so that's okay. Most of this yarn, I would say the majority of this yarn is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight. And then there's also quite a bit of my own hand-dyed yarn in here as well. So that's either, I have two worsted weight bases in my shop. I have my Lenora base, which is 100% superwash merino, and I have my Caring base, which is 100% non-superwash merino. So I have quite a bit of those in here as well, but the majority of the colors in here are Knit Picks Wool of the Andes. So anyway, I'm really happy to have this blanket on the go. It's you know, big enough now where I could use it as kind of a shawl really, and it covers my lap when I'm working on it, which is so nice in the winter. So I'm really enjoying that. So those are all of the works in progress that I have to share with you this week. The last thing I have to share with you is my yarn. So every time I record a podcast, I like to share a set of yarn that I think would work well for a project. And as I mentioned, the next project that I want to cast on, I haven't yet, but I thought I would just go ahead and share the colors that I'm going to be using for that. These are the colors that I'm going to be using in the next project that I make, which is the Stoneham poncho, I believe it is, and it's a design by Diana Walla. And that's another item from my Make 9 list, and I am going to be, my plan is to be adding sleeves to the poncho to make it into a sweater. So the main color that I'm going to be using for that sweater / poncho is, again, my night colorway. This is all on my Josephine base, which is DK weight, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And then for the color work around the yoke, the main color of the color work is going to be my Sweetness colorway, which is one of my favorites. It's a natural base, and then it's speckled with pink, brown, which breaks into orange and blue again, kind of like the black does. It's also speckled with a deep plum color. So I just really love this colorway and how it works up. And then the other color I'm going to be using as the contrast in the yoke for the color work is one of my very favorite colors. This is Gaze. And this color just, I just love it. It just makes me so happy, this color. So I'm really excited. I actually have not knit with this color yet, even though it's one of my very favorites. So I'm super excited to work this into a project. And I cannot wait to cast this project on. As soon as I finish the sparkling cider hat, I'm going to be casting this on immediately. I'm so excited about it. I'm kind of nervous too to hopefully make the addition of the sleeves work. But I think I've knit enough sweaters now that I can kind of figure it out, I hope. The main challenge is just going to be how many stitches do I put on hold for the sleeves? And how many do I leave on the body when I split for the sleeves? That's just going to be the challenge. Otherwise, I'm just going to knit it straight down. And I think I'll knit the sleeves like this one is without any shaping. So hopefully it won't be too hard and it will go well. Anyway, super excited about this project. So anyway, I just like to share a set of yarn from my Etsy shop every time I podcast so that you all can get an idea of what colors work well together. All of my colorways are available on all 9 of my bases at all times. So you can certainly hop on over to my Etsy shop if you are interested in checking out any of the colorways that I offer, and I would really appreciate you doing that as well. So that is all I have to share with you this week. We have been snowbound all week. I have not left our house since I podcasted last week, and even before that. I think the last time I left was the Wednesday before that. So we tried to go to the library earlier this week, but we have a pretty, well, we've got a long lane, or our driveway is a long lane. It's about a half-mile long, and it goes downhill quite a bit, and it curves. And we have gotten about 9 inches of snow, I think, and I drive a minivan with our 5 children, which, you know, doesn't have great traction. And so anyway, I tried to make it up our driveway to go to the library on Tuesday, but we kept sliding and getting stuck, and so I had to back out of the back down the lane again, which of course is downhill and curved and through all the snow. And I was like, I am not doing this. It's not worth going to the library. So anyway, I haven't left. My husband has been able to get to work because he has a 4-wheel drive pickup, but I probably could have made it if I would have been more daring and was driving with more speed to get up the hill, but I'm just not that risky, especially with the van full of kids. I just don't like risking it if it's not urgent to get out. I'd rather stay home where we're safe. So that's what we've been doing. The kids have been playing outside in the snow a ton, which has been so much fun for them, of course. I really love winter. I love being outside in the snow. I just think it's so gorgeous when everything is covered with snow. And yesterday morning, everything was covered in ice crystals, which was so beautiful. And I think I'll insert some footage here at the beginning and end probably of that. I took some video of the beautiful crystals on everything yesterday morning. So anyway, I really enjoy this time of year, even though we have been quite homebound. I really don't mind. I'm a homebody, and so I enjoy it. Anyway, I hope that you all have had a great week, and I hope that you all have a great week ahead as well. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would really appreciate you giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to this channel if you would like. I hope you all have a great week ahead. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.